All right, you've come to the wrong place at the wrong time, so it must be the wrong stuff. Guy Denton, how you doing?
That intro never gets old, no matter how many times you hear it, Matt. Hopefully that isn't just the case for me and you and I, but nonetheless, I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
Good to talk with you. It's obviously been a wild week with the Democratic convention taking place. But I wanted to talk with you a little bit about manhood, because I think nobody exudes masculinity more than the two of us.
Right.
But I think this is I do think this is a theme. And there's different versions of manhood. And, I grew up with the kind of manhood that is like servant leadership. Like, I'm not saying I always achieved it, but, the coaches in my life, my dad, they wanted us to behave a certain way. And someone like a Tim Walz, actually, I'm not saying his politics, but just temperamentally, stylistically, he's a football coach, veteran, that kind of thing. And I think he exudes that. I think Republicans are freaked out that the Democrats have someone on the other side of the, that is giving off these vibes. And did you see this where Tim Walz is speaking, and during his speech, his son, who I think has some developmental disabilities, stands up and starts saying, "That's my dad."
If you've never experienced the hell that is infertility, I guarantee you know somebody who has. And I can remember praying each night for a phone call, the pit in your stomach when the phone had rang, and the absolute agony when we heard the treatments hadn't worked. It took Gwen and I years, but we had access to fertility treatments. And when our daughter was born, we named her Hope. Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. I'm letting you in on how we started a family, because this is a big part about what this election is about. Freedom.
And I have to tell you, man, as a father, I thought it was a beautiful moment. Sadly, some of these right-wing jerks, were mocking him. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, no, I saw the clip. It's no surprise, boys don't cry, right, Matt? Or whenever the men dare not show any signs of having actual emotion and being in touch with their feelings, because, in an age where feelings are a new currency, we should be above that. We shouldn't give in to that wimpish, squishy liberal sensibility. We should be jackasses to everyone we meet, right? We should be. I know it's a bit.
Except Jesus wept and Winston Churchill cried all the time. And so, is it The Cure that said "Boys don't cry"? I can't remember.
Yes,
but
profoundly,
which is a good song, but kind of a bad motto. Because I think it was General Schwarzkopf who said he doesn't trust a man if he doesn't cry.
The old picture of generals don't cry. Generals don't get tears in their eyes.
Sure they do.
They just didn't admit it.
Oh, I think they admitted it. And frankly, any man that doesn't cry scares me a little bit.
So let me just say this. I mean, so there's just Charlie Kirk, who's one of these right-wing influencers, and I don't want to pick on him specifically, but he had a tweet, and then he went on a jag the other day about how the Democrats are the party of toxic feminists.
Because their entire party just exudes hyper toxic femininity. That's right. The Democrat Party has been infected with toxic femininity. And there is such a thing as that. Because at the base of the Democrat Party is not a party that cares about standards, customs, traditions. It's all about love, compassion. Meanwhile, we're being invaded and overrun. And it requires men to... What happens when your society becomes too feminine? The West is what happens. No borders, no control, stuff for everybody. Free hotel rooms for illegals. Open up your prisons, defund the police. The feminine inclination is no standards, no rules, compassion, love, empathy, joy. It's all one. Diversity is our strength, and the downfall of everything good, true, and beautiful. Men can come into our daughter's locker room. You see, when a society gets too feminine, it is the forsaking of guardrails, rules, regulations, standards, that connective tissue of which civilization is built upon.
You know what I'm thinking? Like, this will sound like a brag, but I think it's instructive. So, you know, after high school, when I was sort of young and single, I dated a lot of very attractive women. And then I married the prettiest, well, I dated for years and then ultimately married the prettiest one. And we got married, we joined a church, we had kids, we moved to West Virginia, I started coaching Little League, like all of these things, which I think, you know, not to brag, but I mean, I think that they're a sign of a certain masculinity, of being a part of a community and caring for your family and all of that stuff. But I suspect a lot of these right-wing bros who were obsessed with masculinity didn't do those things, didn't have the experiences. And I wonder how much of it is like, maybe if they had, I never played football. I was more of a baseball guy, but like maybe some of them are like, they just didn't have those experiences and now they're obsessed with it. What do you think?
I think it's a perfectly viable theory that a lot of these people, their brains have been poisoned because they've spent most of their lives hooked to the internet and haven't had any of those real tangible experiences to actually normalize them. I also think, you know, there's a sort of perverse corrupted notion of masculinity that's very prevalent out there, and especially very prevalent in online circles that again, you know, being a man is about being sort of a meat-headed, pig-headed jackass, right? And simply doing what you want and speaking your mind, no matter how valid what's going to come out of it might be. When in actuality, you know, I think what you just said is a great illustration of the fact that, you know, it always seemed to me, but especially for us as, you know, conservatives, right, for people on the center right who are supposed to who are supposed to think that things like virtues and certain moral norms and dogmas are correct and are important to the flourishing of society and are important to be enforced and important for us to live by. So the mark of real masculinity and real manhood, fully realized and actualized, right, is, what is it? Loyalty, respect, responsibility, mentorship. You know, you mentioned community, mentorship to others in your community, acting as a mentor figure to others in your community, to the family unit you're supposed to build, putting in the actual effort to build those things and create those things and live up to the importance and the value of those things and what they generate for civilization more broadly. That's what being a man is about. It isn't simply about shrieking in your studio about how much you don't like Kamala Harris, or spending your evenings yelling at other anonymous people on Twitter instead of actually doing something productive with your time, like recording the Wrong Stuff podcast.
This makes me more manly, I think.
It does.
I dig this show. Well, so there is some funny stuff that I wanted to show you, sprinkled in with a pretty, you know, it's a serious topic, but obviously JD Vance ventured into the whole masculinity question a while back when he talked about these childless cat ladies. And it's now a talking point. It was a talking point at the Democratic convention. It did not always go as planned. I'm going to play this clip. This is from Jon Stewart and The Daily Show.
When a house is on fire, we don't ask about the homeowner's race or religion. No, we just try to do the best we can to save them. And if the place happens to belong to a childless cat lady,
Okay, right now the cameraman has zoomed in on a woman in the audience.
I love that the camera just stayed on her. She literally turned around like, are these saying that hold on. crazy part. After this cutaway, the woman was interviewed. She is childless and has 2 cats. And you know what that means? A C-SPAN don't play. C-SPAN does the research.
So for those listening, after Oprah, as Oprah is talking about a childless cat lady, the cameraman zeroed in on this lonely woman in the audience. And it almost seemed like she knew the camera was looking at her, but based on her facial expression.
She had a startled and kind of affronted look on her face.
Oh,
The
my.
cameraman was scanning the room intently, looking for someone who he could zero in on. And as soon as he found his target, his eyes lit up and he cut straight to her. He earned his pay that night.
He probably thinks he did a good job, and he deserves a Peabody Award for filmography or something. Anyway, we gotta laugh. You gotta laugh. So anyway, JD Vance, who came up with the cat lady thing, he's not doing great, guy. He's not doing great. And I think he is the most unpopular vice presidential nominee ever picked. And I'm talking Dan Quayle, I'm talking Sarah Palin. Just in terms of polling, he is the least popular. So he did this thing, which normally, let me just say, we saw Donald Trump a while back. He went to like a Chick-fil-A, and there were these like African-American workers, and like Donald Trump was a rock star celebrity. And I don't know if that's because he's a famous person, or if it's because they like his politics, or if it's just because his campaign did advance work and went there first and laid the groundwork. But whatever it was, celebrity, charisma, advance work, whatever that was, JD Vance doesn't have it. He did this let's just play the clip. Here he is. He's going to a donut shop on the trail.
The zoo has come to town. Thank you for letting us come in here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm sorry, man? Okay. She doesn't want to be on film, guys, so just cut her out of anything. Appreciate that.
I don't want to be on film.
I'm Jim Vance. I'm running for vice president. Good to see you.
Okay.
How long are you working?
All right, he says, I'm running for vice president. She says, okay. That's her response.
Okay.
How long are you working?
I've been here since the beginning of July.
Okay.
For this year.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Almost 2 years.
Okay, good. Just everything, yeah, I mean, a lot of glazed here, some sprinkle stuff, some of these cinnamon rolls, just whatever makes sense.
Riveting.
Whatever makes sense.
About 4 years? Okay. How long have you been here?
A little over 6 months.
Okay, good.
Okay, good. How long you been? Let's just go around and ask people how long you've been here. I can't put my finger on exactly why that's so painful to watch, but do you have a theory? Why he's just not good at this, right?
Well, it felt like a scene from The Office.
Oh,
if
yeah.
The Office was set on a presidential campaign, that is what it would look like.
It's like Michael Scott, right? It's cringe.
Yes.
What they needed to do, someone needs to take that footage, which is from C-SPAN, and then do like a close-up of like a reaction shot or something of
Just
Stanley.
like the one we just saw of the cat lady. We needed to superimpose that into that video, and it would have been perfect.
Oh, man. Well, he is not good at this. He is not good at this. And one gets the sense that the wheels, I don't know if the wheels are coming off, but things are not going good for Trump Vance. And sometimes you can tell if things are not going well. You could sort of tell because people who used to suck up to you quit sucking up to you. And this happened the other night where Donald Trump did a phoner in for Fox News and Brett Baer and Martha McCallum. And normally, Guy, I think if Trump, the president or the former president's on the air, you throw caution to the wind and you just keep him on the phone. It's going to be good ratings. You keep talking to him. And here they pushed him out of the way because they had to go to Gret Gutfeld's show instead. So let's run the tape.
Two quick things as we wrap up here, Mr. President. Tomorrow, do you expect to be endorsed by Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? And are you making a specific effort in Georgia to make up, if you will, with the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp?
Well, I just saw Brian on A Very Good Man. Did you ever hear of a man named Sean Hannity? And he was interviewed by Sean Hannity, and he was very nice, and he said he wants Trump to win, and he's going to work with me 100%, and I think we're going to have a very good relationship with Brian Kemp, and that was on just before you people went on with that speech that we just listened to.
And RFK Jr.?
It just happened, and as far as RFK, I've had a great relationship with him over the years. I respect him. He respects me. I have no idea if he's going to endorse me. I know he's got a news conference. We happen to be in the same state. Arizona will be in the same state, but in quite different parts of the state. But it's possible we will be meeting tomorrow, and we'll be discussing it. He said, look, he was treated very unfairly by the Democrats. He would have beaten Joe Biden in a Democrat primary. I have no doubt about it. And they made it absolutely impossible for him. They made it that you have to get 60, 70% of the vote just to get in. And you know what?
President.
In the end, the Democrats did the same thing to Joe Biden. They threw Joe Biden out of the party.
And that's
they
why
did
we
the
saw a
same
different
thing
night
as they did to RFK.
Mr. President, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate that live feedback.
Stay right there. Live edition of Gutfeld is coming up. Thank you so much for joining us from Chicago. It's been a great week.
Good night.
Now they're going to Gutfeld.
That wasn't my fault, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, okay. Oh, yep. They're trying to like usher him off stage, but he doesn't get the hint. And finally, so, you know, a lot to unpack there, but let's just start with the fact. Is that telling that Fox, they'd rather get to Gutfeld than talk to Trump? Is that telling, or is that just logistics?
How long do you think he kept rambling for into the phone after they hung up on him? You picture him like Grandpa Simpson. He had the iron held up to his ear and was screaming.
Back in them days, we wore onions on our belt.
That's right. And finally, after 10 minutes, he realized there was no noise coming from the other end anymore.
But there was a little substance, too. One is that Trump, after bashing Republican Governor Brian Kemp, I think like a week ago, is now making up with him. So that I think that's a sign that Trump knows he's in trouble. And then there's the possibility that RFK might endorse Trump, maybe as recent, maybe as soon as this weekend or today. So, but you know, it does seem like Trump is in the desperation mode. If he is trying to make up, you never saw him try to make up with other people that he threw under the bus. But if he's trying, I mean, if Trump is extending an olive branch to a guy he was just attacking, that is a sign to me that Trump is scared.
No, that's a good point. And I think Trump is in desperation mode because he simply can't fix, and maybe he's even aware of the fact that he simply can't fix the fundamental issue with his campaign, which is that he's incapable of actually talking about issues of substance and not just falling back on his old one-liners and cheap insult comedy, which simply isn't going to get the job done. I think that was the major lesson of the otherwise largely excruciating DNC this week. But Harris and Walz are in the lead. Walz is a significantly more compelling figure than Vance. Walz is more charismatic than Vance, as that clip just illustrated. Harris, you can argue endlessly about whether she's manufactured or how sincere of a candidate she is, but ultimately at this point, it doesn't matter. Everything is pointing in her direction. All of the momentum is on her side. And if Trump is going to reverse that trend and reverse the flow of things, what he's actually going to have to do is take it to the Democrats on things that matter and on issues that matter and expose them and expose the many failures that are ripe for exposing that we've seen over the last 3.5 years of Democratic governance. But he can't do that. Instead, he would rather wander the moors and shout on faith about how Kamala is a communist and a comrade and a DEI hire and Walz is a faker and blah, blah, blah. None of that is going to get the job done. I think people are sick of it. And if he can't help himself but from falling back on that and just bloviating interminably in his speeches, as that clip illustrates, then the Democrats are going to cruise to victory almost without even having to try very much.
All right, so I think the funny stuff in today's episode so far has been like inadvertent, right? Like the cameraman during Oprah Winfrey's speech, or Fox News trying to get Donald Trump off the phone to go to Gret Gutfeld.
All of those clips are funny to sick people like like you and me, Matt. I think to most normal human beings, those clips were all agonizing.
There were a couple of actual funny, intentionally funny parts at the Democratic convention. I just want to share one with you that I thought was pretty good. This is from Thursday night, the last night. It's D.L. Hughley, who is a African-American comedian. And I thought this was a pretty good line.
And if he keeps sliding in the polls the way he is, the only way he can keep Kamala out of the White House is if he buys it and refuses to rent it to her. Of course, Kamala's getting broad support. They got black men for Kamala, white men for Kamala, Latinos and Asians for Kamala. They even have Republicans for Kamala. Republicans for Kamala. I guess Donald Trump will finally know what it's like when you get left for a younger woman.
I like that guy.
And it ends with a white dude wearing a trucker's hat. I think it said like "white guys for Kamala" or something.
Nodding affirmatively.
Yeah, that was pretty good, and I think it was funny, but it also reinforces that Trump is now the oldest candidate running for president. So, anyway, overall, I think pretty good convention for Democrats, and right now, I think you got to give Kamala Harris the edge.
I think it was an incredible, from all sides and in all of the main speeches, an incredible piece of legerdemain from all of the people involved. I think Peggy Noonan, made this point earlier in a column today or yesterday, and I think it's entirely right that they managed to frame the entire convention as though their party hasn't been in power for the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Every speech effectively made it seem as though
Kamala is running as the change candidate. Trump is now cast as the incumbent, effectively.
That's right. Running as the change candidate to change everything her own party got wrong over the last 3.5 years. But again, because of Trump's obvious foibles and obvious weaknesses, what does he have to come back with? Nothing effective so far. And I think ultimately, especially with Obama coming back, Obama, that speech, it was as though he descended from the heavens to deliver that address. And I think a lot of what we saw, and especially what we saw from the Obamas, is going to bring home to moderates, wow, this is what the presidency used to look like. I remember when things were more tolerable and more normal, and I wasn't sick of watching the news every day, or at least I wasn't quite as disgusted by watching the news every day.
Let me just say, I agree with you that it is a amazing act of prestidigitation or legerdemain, or what the Democrats have done is impressive, but I do think this is true. We have been living in the Trump era since 2015. And even when Joe Biden was president, Donald Trump was the dominant political figure. And so in a sense, this is about turning the page. That's not BS. There is some truth to that. And I think that's partially a product of the fact that Donald Trump never went away. If it was a different Republican running, Kamala Harris couldn't be running as the change candidate. This is to your point that Donald Trump is largely to blame for the mess that they're in. And by the way, I would also say the Democrats, aside from casting themselves as the change party, despite the fact they have the presidency, have also cast themselves as the party of football, the party of small town America, the party of camo hats, the party of football teams and football coaches and American flags and John Cougar Mellencamp songs and Small Town Saturday and all. Like, as a conservative, I was talking to Bill Scher about this yesterday, but usually when I listen to Democrats or listen to a Democratic convention, there might be parts of it that I'm like, oh, that sounds good. And then there'd be like something would like ping my spidey senses and it would be like, oh, that's discordant. That doesn't really fit. It didn't happen that much during this convention. A lot of it's like, oh, these are the normal people. These are the decent people. They talked a lot about faith, a lot of Bible verses from, and you could, we can pick that apart and say, yeah, this is all fake. Well, conventions are shows. And, when you have, you're either the party of Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Andrew Tate and Hulk Hogan,
right?
As much as we may love the Hulkster, but that's a sort of vulgarian party. And the Democrats, if you look at who they put on stage, seemed more normal.
No, I think that's absolutely right. It may all be illusion, but it's a far more convincing and appealing illusion than anything the other side has to offer, right? And again, especially, the way things move so quickly, how many people can even really remember what the RNC was about or what the actual substance of any of the key primary speeches in the RNC was? I mean, what did Trump even talk about? He bloviated for about an hour and a half. Most of the emphasis was placed on the assassination attempt, which, shocking and significant and lately under-discussed though it was, has still largely been erased from public discussion and public debate. Now it feels like a distant memory, even though it was only about 2 months. When was it? A month and a half, 2 months ago. And
Time is
so
a
now,
flat circle.
I think that's the major lesson of the past year in this election cycle. Yes, but no, I think you're absolutely right, and that's why I noticed multiple times Obama did it, Walz did it. I may be misremembering. I think Hillary did it, but at least several other people did it. Brought back out the weird attack against Republicans. And, if you actually look at a lot of the policy issues, and if you actually look at the policy record of someone like Tim Walz, there are plenty of Democratic mandates and preferred Democratic policies that could be attacked as very weird and very unpopular by most quote-unquote normal, moderate people, right? But Obama, Walz, especially in the way he presented himself, I thought Walz did a terrific job in that speech.
Walz vibe feels normal, so it's hard to convince someone that he is this extremist.
Exactly.
But simultaneously, Republicans have cried wolf so much. They're up in arms about the Olympics, everything, the NFL, the Olympics, everything's left-wing insane. They want to trans your kids. And so, I think they've lost the credibility to actually, Tim Walz has a disturbing, concerning record. All they do is culture war. So now when they actually need it, it doesn't resonate.
And even on the culture war issues, I thought Walz and Obama, again in particular, both took it to the other side very effectively. I was really struck by how fiery and punchy a lot of the middle section of Walz's speech was when he actually attacked on policy issues, and especially when he actually brought gun control and gun rights into it. And he made, I'm going to forget the language, but he made the point, we want our children to be safe in schools, and take it from someone, no Republican loves guns or has more awards or a better record as a hunter than me, but I don't want government to intervene, but I want our children and our people to be safe. That's a message that's, to your point, a message which is going to hold a lot of sway with moderate voters, a lot of effectiveness, and even I'm not saying it's debatable whether or not Republicans should moderate on guns as an issue, but it's certain that Republicans are going to be incapable of delivering anything nearly that clear and seemingly reasonable and effective as the Democrats did, and as Walz did in that speech.
And to the the point about, is this all just a show? Well, I think that we are who we pretend to be to a certain degree. Be careful what you pretend to be, you might become it, or whatever that quote is. I mean, if you look, I'm not saying that it's great to be a phony, but I'd rather have someone who feels like they should put their best face forward than someone who feels like, we need to be as horrible as possible, we need to be the biggest jerks possible. I don't know. I'm not expressing that as eloquently as I might.
Right.
I probably could write it better than I would say it. But ideally, and the perfect scenario is like, you're a good person, you share my political philosophy, and you put on a good show. Absent that, if nothing else, if you care enough to put on a show that comes across as likable and normal, that's better than like sort of flaunting your weirdness.
I think too. I see what you're saying, and I think too, to that point, Republicans are so consumed by this Vulgarian performance art that they've embraced since 2015 that they can't show why anything serious actually matters, and why anything serious should be taken seriously and not just treated flippantly and trivially, and why actual issues. And why on the actual issues they actually have something real and serious to offer to concerned voters and to the sorts of independent and moderate and malleable voters who they should be influencing. And they've done that to themselves they did it to themselves by falling behind Trump in 2016 and doing nothing to constrain or speak out against, and in fact actively embracing in many cases, especially in the Republican media crowd and the conservative media set, embracing all of the worst excesses and most unappealing habits of Trump and Trump's behavior. And now the chickens are coming home to roost when you juxtapose that party and juxtapose that, again, very ugly and crude and often coarse kind of political rhetoric against the sort of dignified and nostalgic and forceful yet measured and optimistic rhetoric that the Democrats embraced in the convention this week.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I got to go to Gret Gutfeld. So we got to rush you along. Gutfeld's up next. But you drive us wild, my friend. We drive you crazy. It's cold gin time again. What does that mean, Guy Denton?
It means it's the only thing that'll keep us together, Matt. Why would it mean anything else?
Another great show, classic episode. Anything, Guy? Anything you want to plug?
Nothing imminently. I'm working on a couple of longer form things, but we'll see what materializes in the coming weeks, Matt. I want to keep teasing everyone.
All right, we'll see you back here in the wrong stuff next week. Thanks, Guy.
Thanks, Matt. Always a pleasure.
All right.
If you like what you heard here today, please make sure to follow the show, subscribe to the show, leave a like, review the show wherever you get your podcast, and also please smash that like button, or whatever the people my age are saying. I don't know. I am a Kiss fan after all. But nonetheless, you can also follow us on X at WrongStuffPod, or drop us a note. Fawning praise or scornful disdain, we accept both, at TheWrongStuffPod, all one word, at gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. We're looking forward to next time.